So I'm really happy to be with you all this week. I'm down in Santa Barbara, about 300 miles south of Redwood City, and uh, it's it doesn't really make any difference where I am because this sangha, this worldwide sangha, is always present here and now. So Gil is teaching a retreat this week, and I'm really happy to be able to offer something in his absence. And I hope it will complement this introduction he's doing to how insight arises. Our practice prepares the mind through a deepening sensitivity to our lived experience moment to moment, to allow these deep insights to arise. And on last Friday, Gil spoke about how the arising of insight it's a natural process. It's a deep seeing, and it happens when the obstacles to that deep, clear seeing have been left behind, have been cleared away. So I thought for this week, I would focus on some of the obstacles to clear seeing, where they arise and how they get in our way. So long before the time of the Buddha, there was a special kind of super walking human, and an individual named Rohitasa was one of these. And then later, hundreds or maybe thousands of years later, this same Rohitasa, after many intervening lifetimes in different forms, had been reborn as a deva, a kind of god or angel or some kind of mythological being that exists in the texts. And he came to the Buddha and he asked him if it was possible to reach the end of the world by walking, by traveling. And the Buddha told him that it wasn't possible. Rohitasa was really pleased to hear this, because during that earlier super walking life, he had walked, taking strides that apparently were a couple of thousand miles in length each stride for the entire time that he was alive, which was about 100 years, only taking time out for his obvious physical needs. And he had never reached the end of the world. So he was glad it wasn't possible. And then, so the Buddha then replied to Rohitasa saying that though it is not possible to reach the end of the world by walking, in order to reach the end of suffering, it is necessary to reach the end of the world. And then he went on to say, for it is in this fathom-long body with its perceptions and mind that I describe the world, its origin, its cessation, and the practice that leads to its cessation. And Bhikkhu Bodhi has called this, Bhikkhu Bodhi, the American monk, who's such a prolific translator of many of the early teachings of the Buddha. Wonderful teacher. He called this maybe the most profound proposition in the history of human thought. That's pretty high praise. So in this story of Rohitasa, of course, Rohitasa was asking about how to reach the end of the outer world, the physical earth. But the Buddha's answer was about the world we experience. And some of us might not measure a full fathom. I'm a lot shorter than that. It's about 6 feet. But no matter what size we are, our entire experience of the world lies within this body. This is where we practice. This is what we practice with. This is where our practice is realized, where insight arises. So this week, I'm going to offer some words about what the Buddha said makes up our world, our loka in the Pali. Sometimes the word is translated as cosmos, but I really prefer the word world because it's simpler, it's our world. how the world comes to us, how we know and experience it. So here within these bodies is where we develop insight, and also the obstacles to the deep seeing of insight arise here as well. So to begin, let's meditate, and I'll invite a little bit of exploration, excuse me, during the meditation into what makes up our world. So if you'd like to take your comfortable meditation posture, posture that expresses both alertness and ease. Yeah. We want to be awake to our experience, but in a relaxed, easeful way. So inviting ease into any areas where there's tension. Maybe doing a brief body scan, just beginning with the top of the head, forehead, and the brow area. Just noticing any kind of tightness, straining, and letting it ease as much as possible. The cheeks and jaw, the throat, and the tops of the shoulders, trapezius muscles. Just see if you can let those ease up. Letting the breath be full. The chest can be open, not held tightly. The belly can be soft. And thighs and calves, just relaxed. Feel yourself sitting or lying, whatever posture you're in, and feel the weight of the body being supported by whatever is under you, the earth, foundationally, fundamentally. Maybe taking a little time to connect with your breathing, taking a few deep breaths just to help connect to what's happening in this present moment, and to settle a little bit. Closing your eyes, just sensing into what can be sensed with your eyes closed. What's actually happening. The breath in the body, whatever's happening in the mind, other sensations, hearing. if there are sounds where you are, noticing what is heard and the knowing of what is heard. Knowing is a mental function, and sensing happens at the place where something is sensed. When we hear a sound, where is it heard? Sounds are sensed at the ear door, but it's the mind that knows that something has been heard, that hearing has occurred. And the mind recognizes it, identifies it usually, maybe reacts to it. The sensations in the body, the sensations of breathing, all the sensations from the tip of the nose all the way down into the lungs, the depth of the lungs, the movements of the belly, all those sensations, they're sensed where they occur. The sensing takes place there, but the knowing of the sensation is in the mind. The mind can simply know, and it can also complicate that simple sense contact with all kinds of activity and reactivity. I want to invite you to stay with what is sensed just as much as possible, letting mental activity settle, maybe ignoring it if it arises, turning attention back to the simple sensations of breathing or hearing or other sensations in the body. Doing that, staying with what's simple, it can be easeful, it can be peaceful. Just sitting back and watching the flow of experience, knowing it, sensing it. Whatever is happening in the body, sensations of breathing, other sensations, even mental activity, can it be known simply, just sensed into, without complicating? Let go of the complication. Just sense and know. This this simplicity in the way we relate to our experience that I'm inviting. It can be a way of warming our hearts, I think. When there is simplicity in our experience, there's more access to what is friendly and welcoming within us, towards our own experience and towards others. And maybe we can turn that outward now with a wish that all beings can enjoy a simple relationship to their lives, that they can have ease, that they might have peace in their hearts, might feel safe and protected, might be healthy, and one day might have the deep insight that leads to freedom of heart. May it be so. So, welcome again. If those some people weren't here at the beginning, just to let you know, this week I'm going to be talking about some of the things that get in the way of the clear seeing that leads to insight in our practice, in our Dharma path. And here's that line from the Buddha that Bhikkhu Bodhi had such high praise for. For it is in this fathom-long body, with its perceptions and mind, that I describe the world, its origin, its cessation, and the practice that leads to its cessation. And after the Buddha had given this pithy teaching on what constitutes the world, some other monks who had heard it asked Ananda, the Buddha's dear cousin and attendant, to try to explicate what the Buddha meant, because it's a little bit enigmatic. And Ananda explained, the world is that in the world by which one is a perceiver and conceiver of the world. It's kind of a convoluted sentence. The world is that in the world by which one is a perceiver and conceiver of the world. So what is that by which we perceive and conceive the world? And what the teachings tell us is that what it is the six sense bases, the six sense spheres: hearing, seeing first, usually seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching, this tactile sense, and mental activity. And so the path to the end of suffering is found in exploring, getting to know, working with, seeing the true operation of these six areas of experience, and gradually letting go of any clinging and craving that's associated with them. So often over the years, I've heard Gil say that in any one moment, there are only two things happening. There is what is happening, and there is how we relate to what is happening. And what is happening is always happening in one of these six sense spheres. That's all there is. And how we relate to what is happening through the mind is how we get caught, how we get obstructed, how we create dukkha, and it's also how we get free. So Gil's begun this series on insight, on the insights that lead to the end of the world. And last week, he spoke about different categories of insight that we develop as we practice. And first there are what he called personal insights, seeing into our habits, our habit patterns, noticing the way we do things, how we've come to be conditioned by our personal history. I think of those as psychological insights. And often I think we spend our first years of practice, maybe many years of practice, with these being the primary kind of insights that we have. We develop more wisdom about our conditioning. We start loosening the attachments to our stories of blame and regret and self-judgment. We start to not take things quite so personally. And then we become ready, as we have opened in that way to our conditioning, we become more ready for the deeper insights, the ones that apply to all of us, to all human beings. And Gil introduced the insight we can have into what is sensed and what we make of it. Nama rupa, appearances and recognition, as he translates that. Name and form is the literal translation. And this is the beginning of wisdom developing in us, seeing the difference between what we experience through our senses and the mental activity that accompanies it. What I was kind of trying to invite during the meditation. And then the next day he introduced conditionality, beginning to see how we experience, what we experience through the physical senses is conditioned by what's present in the mind, and vice versa. How what comes to us through the senses gives rise to mental activity. Everything is conditioned in our lives. When we begin to see this river of conditions flowing that make up our entire life, all the way from birth to death, And when we begin to see that, we begin to see that impermanence, inconstancy, anicca, that it's continual, it's constant. Inconstancy is constant. And then because we see this flow is constant, we come to realize that nothing in our experience is stable, nothing is concrete, nothing is to be relied upon, including the sense of self. And gradually, as a result of this, we lose interest in clinging to what is continually slipping away. And then we become ripe for the deepest insights to arise, the insights into the three perceptions that Gil introduced on Friday. So to use Ananda's language, all the practices that lead to insight illuminate the way we perceive through our physical senses and conceive through our minds the world. Our perceptions condition the mental conceptions, and our conceptions, mental conceptions, conceive how we perceive. There is this kind of feedback loop between those. And gradually, our practice illuminates what obstructs freedom and ease in that relationship and leads us in the direction of the end of suffering. Gradually, the way we relate to experience, the way we conceive our experience, it's reconditioned by our practice. So the first sense sphere that's spoken of in the texts is seeing, sight. The eye as the instrument of sight and the objects that are seen. So seeing is a process that happens between the eye and its object. And of course, the mind interprets what is seen, what is being seen. It recognizes the object if it's seen it before. It makes assumptions often about its use or intention, might begin to tell some stories about the object. The mind has the power, and it seems like it has the inclination quite often to complicate the simple act of seeing. And it does that complication conditioned by all its past experience with that kind of object and what that kind of object has come to mean in our life. We know what a door is because we've been opening and closing doors since we were little kids, But the way the mind interprets what is seen, the mental activity that is triggered, that's where we get caught. And that's also where we can get free. So a door is a pretty neutral object for most of us, I imagine. But what about the idea of a tropical beach and warm blue water, palm trees with breezes wafting through? Are you getting a kind of a visual of that? For many, such a sight, maybe in a travel brochure, will trigger some kind of desire, some strong desire maybe. And for others, that might just look like torture, hot sun, sand in your shorts, noisy people on the beach. How we relate to the sights that we see depends on what's in the mind, old stories, memories, attitudes, current conditions, all those things condition how we see what we see. It's not clear all the time. I think it's helpful to make a distinction between seeing and looking. This is something we talk about often. It's really useful. As long as our eyes function, we're going to see what is before us. But looking is a more intentional activity. There's a focus on one thing, usually accompanied by some kind of curiosity or interest in the mind. Maybe there's desire, maybe there's aversion or fear. There's cognitive complication involved in looking. Whereas seeing, on the other hand, it can be a simple receptive process. You might experiment right now, just looking intentionally at something, maybe the screen, maybe something else in the room. Look at it as if you want to know, what is this exactly? Really, with curiosity. And notice what's the mind like? What are the muscles in the face like, especially around the eyes? I could feel my own eyes kind of squinting a little bit with that, even though I knew I was going to say that. And now just let go of that, let go of the effort. Maybe close your eyes for a couple seconds. And just kind of reset. And now opening your eyes again, just let your eyes receive what's in front of them. Maybe the screen again, maybe the room you're in. Notice what it feels like, in the eyes, in the muscles of the face, in the mind, to just receive the images rather than reaching out for them. Is there more calm in the seeing? Is there more ease? Moving from looking to seeing is a way of relaxing, of calming the mental interaction with what we see. So we want to notice what it is that creates attachment between the act of seeing and what is seen, because that is where our clear vision gets clouded, distorted. The things that arise when we're looking instead of seeing. Sometimes there's some form of aversion, maybe some form of desire. And I think doing this simple practice of switching between receptive seeing and actively looking, it can kind of help us see. It can point to whether there's something tying our seeing to what is seen that's maybe something we want to look at, some way of relating to what's happening that's taking us in the direction of more stress, of less ease. And of course, in our daily lives, we need to be looking actively quite often in order to navigate the world, in order to avoid bumping into things, using what we see to help us act skillfully. But noticing this difference, I think it can help us to become more sensitive to what is it, that's driving the looking. I know a teacher who long ago gave a talk on sense restraint, and something that he said then has stuck with me ever since. He spoke about doing walking meditation on retreat and how his habit in his life at that time, he was a young man at that time, had been to be on the lookout for attractive people, for the possibility of starting a romantic relationship. And so he knew he was often driven by sense desire, sensual desire. And he described, being determined to simply practice his walking meditation. And he felt this urge to look at the other people walking in the same area when he was doing the meditation. And he said to himself, if I look, I will see. If I look, I will see. Not meaning that he would see in that receptive way we just experimented with, but that he would see something he liked and be pulled into desire. And he recognized that if he used his eyesight to look at the other people walking, that attachment, that hook would arise. He would begin wanting something as a result of looking. And so he kept his vision lowered. He didn't look at anyone in particular, just seeing his walking path. And as a result, his mind was able to stay calm. In daily life, we aren't likely to be so careful to avoid looking at what we know is going to give rise to unskillful reactions in the mind, but it's something to think about. looking at the newspaper or the news online, more likely for most of us, I think. If we choose to open an article that we already have a sense is going to lead to becoming angry, upset, filled with hostility, do we really want to do that? We can't always avoid seeing what might give rise to unwholesome reactions, but we can look at what the pull is, the hook that arises between seeing and what is seen in those moments. So seeing is a really a powerful way that we perceive and conceive of our world, and becoming aware of what arises in our minds and hearts when we see certain things, certain people, certain landscapes, aware of whether what arises serves us, leads us toward more peace, toward a more open heart, to a sense of beauty, a connection, or in the opposite direction toward unhealthy desire, toward ill will, toward rage. Noticing that, seeing the difference. We can't always control what we can hear or see or smell or feel. And we don't want to ignore important things that are difficult to see, but we have agency in how we relate to the world. That arises in our experience. And learning to be wise in the ways we relate to all our senses is a really big part of how we come to the end of the world of suffering. Becoming wise about this is a really gradual process, of course. So tomorrow I'll talk about hearing, which is another way that we perceive and conceive of our world. And in the meantime, I invite you to spend some time really attending to what it is that you see and noticing when you get hooked in some way in the looking. Maybe there's just simple interest, curiosity, navigating the world, but notice the hooks that might be there. Desires or aversions, judgments or comparisons that diminish your inner well-being, your clarity, that get your thinking going in a direction that doesn't seem so healthy. It's only through noticing the conditions that give rise to stress that we will eventually let go of what gives rise to stress. So with that, went a little over, I see. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.